Hello there. So someone asked a while ago, what was the choice point in Atlantis? So if we have the juice choice as the choice point here for our planetary end times in this timeline, in this civilization, what was the choice point in Atlantis? Because the nine have said that there's always a choice point at the end of that cycle. A choice point that presents an opportunity for individuals to move into ascension or not go through ascension. So it's given at planetary end times when a planet is coming into completion in order for the final test, if you will, or the final choice for you to be able to stand in your sovereignty and remain sovereign. And when you are sovereign, you are also in integrity and are classed as a being that is integral, a sovereign integral or an integral sovereign. So this is the same thing as an individualized soul or on the journey towards individualization, holding high individualization, holding memory of all and everything, or the access to all and everything, and holding memory of your own incarnational journey throughout multiple incarnations and all the teachings that you have been given and the experiences that you have been through remain there and accessible. So that's what that means. And in Atlantis, there was a choice point. And so someone said, was it also a juice program? So I'm going to get to that, which is really interesting. I asked the nine as I didn't know the answer. And so I present what the nine have said, and I bring the nine in towards the end of what I'm going to talk about today. But before we get to the Atlantis choice point question, I've just got a few little questions here regarding reincarnation, the journey of the soul, regenesis, and the juice program. That is a topic that I have had so many questions on. So I'm just going to look at these few questions before we go into the question about Atlantis. So someone asked, prior to our incarnating, did we know that there would be a choice point in this reality? This has kind of been addressed before, but I will say again, yes, every soul knew about the choice point prior to incarnation into this current cycle. Now, they didn't necessarily know about the incarnation itself. It depends how well they accumulated and held their memories and their charge. So if we've got a soul coming in with high individualization, that soul aspect would be fully aware. But there may be souls recycling in from this reincarnational trapping that haven't held on to that charge and haven't held on to those memories. Now, they would have been aware that they were incarnating into an end times planetary completion of multiple cycles, but they might not realize that that what the choice point would be or where it would come in the incarnation. But they would be aware that they were going into a planetary completion point. That's all souls are aware of the time period that they're coming into and where they are in the cycles. The souls are aware of that, even if they're on a hijack. But the awareness doesn't remain within the fields with these individuals that are on this incarnational wheel. It remains within the fields and is far more accessible to individuals who have held on to that charge, that memory, and are coming in not necessarily on a reincarnational wheel, but because they've planned to come in, that they came in for a reason. So they came into this earth cycle of their own free will. So yes, the answer to that question is yes. Next question, Magenta, did some people take on extra karmic balancing in this incarnation, hoping to prepare for ascension? My reply, extra karmic balancing. Yes, some souls would take this on, and these are predominantly indigo individuals. However, they don't necessarily take on this extra karmic balancing in order to go through ascension. This whole template, the indigo template of taking on extra karma balancing, if you will, is very much related to the biblical picture of Jesus died for our sins. Jesus died on the cross for our sins. That's what this means. It's the indigo individual taking on larger karma than their own path would accumulate. They take on karma for other souls as well in order to clear that karma on a planetary level. So it's the same thing. Jesus died for our sins. The Christed indigo individuals are going through incarnation and coming back into this cycle and taking on large amounts of karma. It means exactly the same thing. So indigo souls are simply karma clearers. I mean, that's one of the jobs that they do. It's one of their main missions. They're karma clearers on a planetary wide, and many of the grid workers are galactic wide. That's the indigos. The crystal individuals, the Blu-ray individuals have different roles, but the indigos are very much karma clearers. And that's the path that they chose for growth, learning, expansion, and ascension, but not for ascension per se. They don't do it to ascend. They do it because that is the mission they take on, and they do it in service. And so every indigo individual will have been through, it will appear to them when they look back at their lives that they have been through 3 lifetimes in one, or actually possibly even 10 lifetimes in one. They will have gone through so much experience. And I'm not just talking about traveling to different countries. I'm not talking about third 3D reality experiences, although that comes into it. But I'm talking about experiences emotionally, psychologically, energetically, spiritually. They will have taken on an awful amount, and there would be huge growth in these indigo individuals' path from who they were when they were a child, who they were when they were a teenager, and who they are as an adult. Now, everyone goes through that, but with the indigos, that difference in these phases in their life is very pronounced. So that's why the karma is taken on. This karma clearing is taken on because it's part of the indigo template. The keys for the indigo come in with that ability, that skill, and that mission, that goal. Okay, next question. Magenta, is the purpose of raising the collective vibration for those going into regenesis to start from a higher collective vibration overall? So what this person is saying is, for those going through regenesis, are we raising the collective vibration so that those that go through regenesis start again at the beginning in a higher vibrational place? Great question. But here's my reply. No, this is not the purpose of raising collective vibration. It's not for that. Really great theory, but that's not the reason. It's for ascension of humanity, the planet Earth, the solar system, and the galactic sphere, if you will. It's the galactic upgrade. Regenesis begins again with new planetary life seeding, and that vibration will raise and fall and raise and fall as they evolve, as they go through this same sort of sine wave that the new planetary seeding will go through. So raising of vibration is for awareness, expansion, memory activation, and ascension for those souls moving with that energy raise. It is not to allow those who go through regenesis to start at a high point. That is a brand new seeding, and it will depend where those souls go and what universe, what galaxy they go into as to where the vibrational frequency starts from. Now, we're in a sine wave experience, and that's the predominant, but There are so many different vast possibilities of how incarnation can occur. But those who go through regenesis from this particular planet and this timeline will be going to a 3D planet. Because regenesis, even though it's a beginning again, it's still a continuation of a larger cycle. So they won't be coming down the frequencies from a higher vibrational place, although that's happening all the time from that perspective. But from the perspective of the linear reality they go through, then that will be third dimensional. But as I've explained before, there are aspects of those souls or memory pathways of experiences that parts of those souls will have been through before that are in an ascension state, in a higher vibrational place, in a higher vibrational planetary system. So a soul doesn't just have a 3D aspect alone, it has multiple multidimensional counterparts. The linear experience will be 3D. Okay, next question. Magenta, is it because the service to self hold the memory as a trauma of Atlantis? And this way they play it out and can't help it? Or were they the same souls who again took on this task to destroy the planet and humanity again as part of the human progress awakening? I began to understand a few years ago, they really are here for our progression and awakening. Even at times it looks like the opposite. So I replied, it's the latter. They're here for our progression and awakening from the higher perspective, which I've discussed before. But they're not all the same souls that went through the Atlantis journey. The majority of the dark magicians today were the dark priests then. Not the cabal. We're talking about the overlords deep underground. So when we look at the dark magicians today, they were the dark priests from Atlantis. The majority of that structure, which some people call the cabal, but also you can refer to the cabal as the state that is deep. So we've got a tiered structure within the service to self field, if you will. So we've got this, let's call them dark magicians. They would have been the dark priests from Atlantis reincarnated, it's true. But you've got this other aspect to the service to self structure that are made up of new souls, hijacked souls, all sorts of souls that have been deliberately pushed into a service to self vibration when potentially they could have been a service to other soul. The reincarnational line has been hijacked to draw these souls down. So these are more, perhaps you could call them overlord minions, but we know these individuals as the state that is deep, and somebody may refer to them as the cabal, but also people refer to the dark magicians as the cabal. So we've got a wide structure here. So when we're talking about the overlords deep underground or the dark magicians, yes, many of them have reincarnated again from Atlantis. Now, this is difficult to get one's head around, but some of these are very ancient souls and have learned how to live within longevity. I'm not completely sure how they do this, but they do manage to live a long time and hold high memory. And when they reincarnate back into the same family, the same bloodline, their memories come back very quickly. So they've learned to hold this immortality field. And there's other ways they do this as well. But they're rare and there's few of them, but they are the overlords deep underground or the dark magicians. I'm going to go back to this question because it is slightly convoluted. Is it because the service to self hold the memory of Atlantis as a trauma? So they do hold the memory of Atlantis and what happened, but they don't really see trauma the way that we do. We see trauma as something that could potentially cause us risk or harm or fragmentation, and we have to learn to integrate that trauma. But they don't do it like that. They use the trauma to power up their own service to self polarization. So it isn't, it's trauma, but it's not trauma to them in the same way as it is to us. To us, it's unwanted. We don't like trauma. To them, they are more than, I won't say happy, but they want to draw in these traumatic experiences. It's completely different. You can't really say it's trauma. So is it because the service to self hold the memory as a trauma of Atlantis? And this way they play it out and can't help it. Not really when it comes to trauma, playing out the whole thing again. Now, I presume this question means can't help it. Well, that's a very deep one. I mean, it's not that they can't help it. It's just that they are on a service to self path. So that's the path they're on. They're on a path of negative polarization. They can help it. That they're not just passive in this journey and they just can't help doing what they're doing because they're so traumatized. No, not the ones underground, not the overlords, not the dark magicians. What you're saying would apply to the state that is deep, but they're still on the same path. So they would be training for that path, even though some of them don't understand it. Some of them don't believe it. And some of the state that is deep don't really know what the overlord dark magician's roles are. So there's quite a lot of individuals in that structure who don't understand the deeper structure that they're in. They see the superficial field like money and power, but they don't really understand the dark spirituality and the dark magic. So that's the difference there. So when it comes to the dark magicians saying that they can't help it, they absolutely can help it, but they choose to move this way. So it isn't quite what you're saying. But then you say, were they the same souls who again took on this task? Yes, they were. That's true. They are the same souls. From the majority of them, not all of them, have reincarnated again from Atlantis to go through the same pattern. But when you say here to destroy the planet and humanity again, that's not really the goal. It's certainly not about destroying the planet. Remember, we are discussing fiction here. We are talking about my fictional novel, which is an urban fantasy fiction novel with a bit of horror in there as well. Destroying the planet is definitely not what they want to do. That's not their agenda. What they are wanting to do is anchor their own structures into the planet. So if you will, change the energetic and potentially the actual geology of the planet, the political structures, the financial systems. They want to change the structure. They don't want to destroy it. However, from our perspective, moving into an organic reality, that is a destruction. So we would see that as destroying, but it's not actually destroying planet Earth per se. And there's two different perspectives here, the service to others perspective and the service to self perspective. Destroy the planet and humanity again as part of the human progress and awakening. So yes, that's true, okay? But these dark magicians know this at a soul level. So at a soul level, they are aware that they are providing, if you will, contrast for the service to others individuals. They are providing catalyst. They take that mission seriously. But that knowing isn't, whilst it's a major part of their agenda from a higher perspective, from the perspective of the dark magicians incarnated, their own agenda is priority, but they are aware of their agenda, which is their focus, being a catalyst for ascension, for the service to others' souls. But that's not really the drive or the purpose. The drive and the purpose is the creation of their own structure and the continuation of their own structure. And even though they are aware that they are acting as contrast and catalyst, they still don't have any particular vested interest in the survival of service to others individuals. I mean, there's a certain respect, and the way that they see it when it comes to ascending individuals that are out there teaching this information, if you will, or in some way delivering the codes and keys to the rest of humanity, there's a certain respect, because they will see those service to others individuals as having navigated through the traps and are on their path. So there'll be a certain respect, but that does not take away from their own goal, which is the creation of their own structure. So I hope that's explained your question. So yes, that was a good question. Thank you. Okay, next one. Magenta, I feel we have many mini choice points all the time. And these, if constantly coherent with each other, form nodes of larger yet similar choice points with more of a karmic consequence. Like all the little no's in my life have made this big no a much easier choice. And my reply was exactly. That is exactly how it is. That's absolutely spot on. That's how it works. The mini choice points, you can have a couple of mini ones. It doesn't really touch your ascension journey and your enlightenment. But when you take multiple mini choice points and they collectively move together to form nodes of larger similar choice points, there's more of a karmic consequence when they move together. Absolutely. So all the little no's in this individual's life have made this big no, as in the main choice point, a much easier choice. Absolutely. And that will be the case for all aware individuals, especially those who are spiritually aware, and especially the indigos. But the crystals are flowing along and taking note, and they've got their own energy keys working for them, and they're natural healers, so they're seeing things in a different way. But for all of these individuals, the no's in their life, as they've gone through this journey of life and discovered the different karmic consequences of their actions, this large choice point becomes a much easier choice. It's not even a choice at all for those individuals, because it would never, ever be a yes, because they're in tune, they're intuitive, they've got high discernment. So they already knew something was coming before it came. So when the choice point as the juice program was presented, instantly, not all of them, some would have had to have thought, oh, should I or shouldn't I, or let's do a bit of research, what does this mean? But I'm talking about those who are holding this high individualization, this high charge, memory, awareness, intuitive, discernment when it comes to their reality, spiritual understanding. They would have seen this choice point. They would have known it was coming before it arrived. And when it came, there would be no choice to make. They would have already just seen that as a huge, well, that's not for me. No. So what's difficult for those people is seeing the others take the choice point. And as I've said before, that's something we need to take a step back on and not allow ourselves to become emotionally drawn into, which is very difficult when it's loved ones and family members, your own children, your own parents, your own siblings, your best friend. Very, very difficult. However, if we allow ourselves to be caught up with that emotion, that emotional trigger from watching others make this choice, knowing what they're doing, then we can move into distortion. And what I've noticed that some of the spiritually aware individuals are doing is they're creating this new not fantasy, well, it is a fantasy, this new way of thinking in their mind to place everything so that it seems okay. And I've heard people say things like, oh, it's all right because they're all placebo, or it's okay because they can't affect us. We can mix with these individuals as much as we want because we've got the power to transmute it, or we can give them healing, or you know, there's all these different ways of trying to reason with this situation that our family and loved ones are going through, to the point where people are saying things like, you know, the Pleiadians are going to come down with some new technology that will heal everyone who's had the juice, or the med beds are going to be delivered to everyone and all the juiced people can hop on in them and they'll be completely healed, or a big flash of light is going to engulf the planet and wipe all the juice out of the people. And these things may or may not happen. The point is, if that's where we are going in our mind, in order to place this into some order of, oh, it's all fine, it's all okay. When we do that, we go into this victim savior template. It's the savior. The Pleiadians will save us. The med beds will save us. The flash of light will save us. And that's not how it is. So I do not see these things occurring in the timeline in the way that people are saying. Pleiadians saving us, absolutely. The Pleiadians are there with us. The higher dimensional entities and intelligences and extraterrestrial individuals are there with us all the time, communicating with us. But someone coming in and wiping out this this juice program, well, that negates the choice point in the first place. That's why it's a choice point. It isn't something, oh dear, I've made a big mistake, shouldn't have done that, but it's okay. This will wipe it out, that will transmute it, that's going to get rid of it. It wasn't really harmful in the first place, it's all placebo. These are just ways for individuals to reframe their mind, to come into a place that doesn't hurt them. And I can understand why individuals are doing that. Even spiritually aware, unjuiced individuals are doing this because they can't bear to see their loved ones going through this. The best thing to do is take a step back and move into objectivity. Be aware of what's happening. Don't allow yourself to fall into these defense mechanism thought processes. Allow yourself to stay in neutrality and objectivity and integration of any hurt or emotional reaction. Because when you have that emotional reaction, you're drawing yourself into their reality, and that's not good for them, because they have their own free will and their right to choose. And as I've said before, they have the right to not know. They have the right to not know the truth, and they have the right to not ascend, and they have the right to go through regenesis. So that's their choice on a soul level. And I know it's hard, and I know that I keep repeating this, but it is important to get. And I'm still seeing people just saying all this stuff, you know, and I'm not saying that there isn't healing there. And I'm not saying that there aren't protocols that can help these individuals. There are healers out there working with these individuals. And I'm not saying that ascension is off the cards for every single juiced individual. The 9 have said quite clearly, the very rare few will be able to go through ascension. And I stand by that. So it's not every single soul. So anyway, yes, mini choice points coming together to create a bigger choice point and making this particular end times juice choice point an easier choice. And I replied exactly. Okay, next question. I think I may have responded to this already. Magenta, I have my mother, father, and closest sister who passed in this last decade. I've not responded to this particular question, but I've responded to a similar one. I would hope to connect with them again, as I know they're part of my soul family, not just in this incarnation, but I wasn't sure if they'd choose regenesis or ascension, as all 3 of them have left the planet already early for their age. So if they've all left the planet already early for their age, they passed in the last decade, then I'm assuming that these individuals passed prior to the juice choice point. then they would absolutely be continuing either in reincarnation or whatever journey the soul would choose. And because we are looking at souls that are going into individualization, then these individuals are the ones very likely to have reincarnated back in, or will be waiting for a chance to reincarnate, but remaining on the path of individualization, if that was the path they were on, depending on other choice points that they took in their life. But my reply was, yes, you can absolutely connect with them again if it's a mutual choice for both of you, because the connections, whether it's spirit, or whether it's spirit physical, or reincarnation as physical, it must be a desire and a choice from both sides. Okay, next question. Magenta, I wonder if Lemuria was the first 26,000 year cycle, followed by Atlantis as the second 26,000 year cycle, and then is this current cycle the third and final 26,000 year cycle for this Earth? So this is what I replied. Lemuria, then Atlantis, then now. So yes, that order, that's what I'm shown. However, there were many smaller civilization cycles within these time periods, and it's not exactly 26,000 years in a literal sense, as there are so many different cycles within Lemuria, within Atlantis, and within the cycle now. So that's the reply to that question. Okay, next question. Magenta, as far as I understand everything, there's no more reincarnation. If I'm wrong, but I don't think I am, surely you can set your intention after leaving your now physical vessel to where you want to go, another planet or back to source. It's up to you. The reincarnational cycle has always been a trap in my knowledge. So I may have already responded to a question similar to this, but basically I'll say very quickly because I want to move on. From the perspective of the individualized individual who is going through ascension, who is retaining memory, working with that charge, yes, they can set their intention. I mean, the question here is after leaving your new vessel to where you want to go. Actually, you can set your intention before you leave your vessel about where you want to go. You can start setting your intentions now about where you want to go. And throughout our this particular cycle of Earth's history, there have been many souls that have got to the point where they have been able to choose their next incarnation. And I know that because I did that myself. And I remember doing it. I actually remember choosing my next incarnation prior to the transition period as I left my body and in the in-between stage. And I remember drawing in this incarnation as me now, as Magenta. I remember doing that from my last incarnation to this one. Or it may have been an incarnation with others in between, but this was the one I drew in from that one. But there's quite a lot of years in between the two. So anyway, so yes, that can be done, absolutely. And it is up to you. But the souls that are caught in the reincarnational cycle, which you've said, the reincarnational cycle's always been a trap, absolutely. Those that are caught in that, who haven't got that charge, who haven't held on to the memories through individualization, and they're losing charge as they go through this trapping cycle, no, they wouldn't be able to do that. They don't. You have to have spiritual knowledge, esoteric knowledge, magical knowledge of some form to be able to do this. And you have to be able to hold the charge. You need charge, blue starfire, quantum convergence charge, which is the DNA is able to hold memory through death, through the death experience. That's what that means. And these souls caught in the reincarnational trap don't have that. So no, they would not be able to set their intention prior to leaving their vessel or during or after. They are just magnetically drawn back into another reincarnation. And that's what I was saying in the last video I did about random incarnations versus incarnations that are part of a soul contract. So I did reply and say from the fifth dimensional perspective, this is correct. Reincarnation becomes a choice at that point. So that's the answer to that question. Correct from 5D. Next question, Magenta. Can a spirit be contacted, or even can they work with you as a guide if they are reincarnated? Really good question. My reply is yes, a spirit can be contacted and can work with you as a guide from the spirit levels and still be reincarnated within physicality, because we are multidimensional beings and exist within multiple realities and dimensions simultaneously. So you will find, if you have a higher dimensional guidance system, that is you. That is actually you. So it's not just that it's a relative or a spirit that you knew. It's actually you in the future. That's the presentation. So the 9 are me in the future, but that's just one presentation that they have. The fact that a soul construct has reincarnated makes no difference to the soul aspect within antimatter, who will remain an intact memory complex as long as there are incarnated souls who hold knowledge and awareness of that previously incarnated individual. As long as there's any thought of that individual remains intact within antimatter. When there's no longer any knowledge of that soul, then that soul would still hold an antimatter blueprint, but it wouldn't be that individual. It would be a different aspect of that soul. So this is the case with all souls, with caveats, because we have a linear perception and we have multidimensional perceptions. Each dimension we have a consciousness, if you will. We have a counterpart, a self, and a perspective within each dimension. And we need to learn to operate from one dimension on its own, because if we take the viewpoints from other dimensions while we're in one dimension, this can cause confusion, clarity, and insanity, ungroundedness, and fragmentation and insanity. But when we are learning about this as part of our ascension, enlightenment, and evolution, spiritual evolution, then we can hold those perspectives. And that is the opposite of insanity. That takes you into this genius flow. And that's what the starseeds are doing. Okay, next question. Magenta, I'm sure you have probably covered this before, but what about those souls who crossed over just before the choice point? Will they ascend or will they reincarnate? And since we are at planetary end times, where will they be reincarnated? I'm just going to put a light on. It's getting a bit dark in here. Okay, my reply. Some may ascend and some may not. As to where they will reincarnate, that's private and personal to them and their path. And it's not something I would be permitted to access without permission or an extremely close soul bond with that individual. So I wouldn't be able to tell you where they're going to reincarnate. Depends on the level of individualization, what dimensional place they were from prior to the incarnation, and whether they've held that memory field. So they'll have a huge amount of possibility open to them. Or are they, if you will, a new soul within that particular memory field that's gone through an ascension process? They will have a vast opportunity, but maybe not as much opportunity. It depends on the, if you will, the DNA structure and where it's got to in the evolution within the reality of that life. So are they still on a double helix? Have they moved into the triple helix? Beyond the triple helix, have they moved into the infinite helix? Omnipresence. So, you know, are they basically at 3 strands, 4 strands, 5 strands? How many strands of the DNA have they managed to reconfigure, if you will, and activate? Because that is the blue starfire and the quantum convergence charge and the holding onto the memory. The more DNA strands you have, the more memory you have, and the more charge you have to hold that memory. But if they did cross over just before the choice point, I mean, if they are good people and loving people, kind people, and lived a good life, they didn't go through the choice point, so they will either reincarnate or ascend. So the possibilities are endless for them. But for these individuals that have crossed over before the choice point, they are unlikely to go through regenesis because they didn't take the choice point, unless they have accumulated huge node points of multiple mini choice points and lots of karma, in which case they'll go through regenesis. Okay, we are now getting to the Atlantis question. Magenta, what was the choice point 26,000 years ago? Was this during Atlantis? As I've said, it's not quite the 26,000 years cycle in the linear way it's being presented, as these are multiple cycles within each civilization. And 26,000 years is also a memory trigger, like the 144,000, as I've spoken about before. But the question is, the last choice point given at the end of a cycle was Atlantis? Yes. So I didn't know the answer to this, but I asked the 9. So my reply, it was Atlantis, and I don't understand the choice point at this time. It's a technology I have never seen. So I was being shown the 9. They were showing me what this was. I'm like, well, what's that? I don't know what it is. So the nearest thing I can explain to what I'm being shown is it's similar to a headset, like a virtual reality headset, but it isn't virtual reality. We don't have anything like it here that I know of. And the nearest thing that I could think of that in all my memory to actually match what the 9 was showing me is this game that everyone played in one of the episodes of Star Trek. So this was Star Trek: The Next Generation. So if you are a Trekkie, you'll know exactly what I mean. If you haven't watched Star Trek, then, you know, go and research it and have a look at some of the pictures from this particular episode. So there was a game that was being played that everyone got addicted to, and it was in this Star Trek episode. Someone wrote the other day, is it true that Star Trek is a documentary rather than a sci-fi? And the answer is yes, absolutely. There's so much truth in so many different fictional sci-fi, fantasy films and books and fiction. Star Trek, absolutely, yes. So this is Star Trek: The Next Generation, and the episode is called The Game. It's the 106th episode of the American science fiction television series Star Trek: The Next Generation. It's the 6th episode of the 5th season. So what I was shown by the 9 is something very similar to this. The 9 say it's the addictive aspect that's important, or rather, that's important to actually understand what the choice point is. An addiction to a brainwave altering technology that was presented as something benign. That was the Atlantis choice point. So no, it wasn't juice. It was this headset thing, like that game. So I've got more questions here, and I do bring the 9 in to discuss further. So the next question, Magenta, would it be accurate to say that all of us during the Atlantis choice point failed? And we had to take the regenesis path. Hence, here we are on Earth 26,000 years later, or through this multiple 26,000 year cycle later, faced with another choice point because we failed. And my reply, no, some failed, as you put it, and some did not. And it isn't a failure. It's not really a failure, I wrote here, but that isn't what you asked. You didn't ask about, is it a failure or a success? You answered, your question was about, did we all have to take the regenesis path? And the answer is no. Some did not. Some ascended and some did go through regenesis, but the ones that went through regenesis, as I've said before, there'll be a different soul. It's not the same soul, but they'll have access to those memories at the time of ascension. So as everyone is ascending now, if you want to look at what occurred before any experience that you've been through that's like regenesis, you can actually access those memories if you want to. But you're going to get, when you do that, you'll get memories of potentially multiple lifetimes all at the same time, because your soul structure will be different. It's really vast and deep, and I've covered this subject so much. So hopefully I have helped with this subject. As I said, it's so complex. Okay, next question. Magenta, the question regarding Atlantis is really powerful, especially for me, and one which brings me to tears, to be honest with you. I can't see much of it, but I have this overriding feeling that I tried so hard to stop something and I totally failed, even though I know it wasn't ultimately failure. I think I hold a lot of trauma here, and it's difficult to process all this at times. And your last couple of videos talking about Atlantis, you have really helped, again, in a way I simply can't describe. Thank you. So I just replied and said, yes, the destruction of a civilization or destruction of a planet is held within the memory fields for all souls, especially those who are holding high memory and individualization and are coming in from an Atlantean incarnation. And that image that's held within the memory fields is triggered when the fifth dimensional memory is accessed. So as we go through ascension, all these memories are triggered. Going through ascension isn't necessarily just one bliss move after another. There is trauma coming in with the memories. And that's why it's so important to be objective, to be discerning, and to understand what integration is and how to do it. And what you are talking about has been hijacked and is known as the Armageddon program. It's part of the service to self agenda. So that what they will do is bombard humanity with images of planetary destruction. So for example, if you watch a film, sci-fi film, where a planet's destroyed, like Star Wars, you know, I'm sure there's a planet that's destroyed in Star Wars. I think, I don't remember fully that film, but in science fiction, you'll see something like the destruction of a planet. And when you watch that, it triggers deeply an emotional reaction, because the Armageddon program of destruction and end of civilizations and end of planetary systems and galaxies, etc., galactic wars, whatever word you want to give to those collapses and rebuilding, reseeding, retriggering, regenesis, all of those things, they are kept within the memory. And so that's played upon, whereas really they are triggers there for us to be able to move through integration and ascension and learn how to take the emotion that comes with it, deep emotion of loss, and this, as the questioner is saying, this feeling of trying to stop something and totally failing, taking that and finding out what it is, why is it there, let's look at it, and then let's go through integration. It's also part of the crucifixion agenda, the crucifixion program that all souls on earth are going through. So it's this this ending of life, this taking away of life. But these, on a spiritual level, are triggers for our own integration, so that we can breathe through them and integrate them and place them. So what we're actually doing is working with destruction and creation, and deciding we integrate destruction and turn it into creation. We learn how to create out of destruction and take our perspective into a service to others' polarity and reality, into true creation. And the whole process, which is organic and natural, as we go through this integration and move into these series of upgrades, that's been hijacked. So that's what the Nine call the Armageddon program, and it's blasted at humanity, especially through films and television and that sort of thing. Okay, next question. Magenta, are these brainwave altering technologies available to us today? Are they binaural beats? And my reply was, if you're talking of the Atlantean Choicepoint, then no, not that I know of. Binaural beats is a healing tool. I'm sure it could be used as the opposite, but I know it as a healing tool, and the Atlantean technology was not a healing tool, but was presented as something like that. And then someone said, Magenta, oh my goodness, this is one of my favorite Star Trek episodes ever. And since this has started, I feel like the two ensigns trying to save the minds of the crew. I've even explained this episode to non-Trekkies, saying this is how I've been feeling the last 2 years. So yeah, I mean, even if you're not into Star Trek, this is a good episode to watch as a metaphor for what we're going through, as well as showing you the nearest thing that I can think of in my memory as what the 9 was showing me. So like I said, augmented reality headset, but really that doesn't, yes, it does have an addictive quality, but not like the Star Trek episode. This is definitely an addictive aspect to it. So yes, that episode is very metaphoric for what we're going through, what the aware individuals are going through. And this is the configuration of a choice point. Some are aware and some are not. That's why there's a choice point. And that's why there's a bifurcation here going on. So I have asked the 9 to speak further on this Atlantis choice point, because ultimately that's sort of the main thread of this particular video is to talk about questions to do with the whole choice point thing that's going on this planet, the Juice choice point. And it's interesting to know what the Atlantean choice point actually was. So here's what the 9 said. That which our conduit, Magenta Pixie, is seeing does not exist upon your planet at this time. This is a stimulation of addiction centers of the brain to create a false euphoria that can then be tweaked to different types of euphoria of emotion by the controller of the technology. The euphoria can be taken down into opposite levels, such as deep despair, depression, and sadness, if the compliance towards the particular event, situation, or action is not followed and obeyed. The technology was marketed as a healing device and a device to create expansion of intelligence and higher connection. Indeed, this was partly true, and for some would present a religious type of euphoria, if you will, a false rapture. Just as in your choice point End Times Now, many souls believed the manipulation. A similar goal is aimed for in your current now times, using technology within chemical deliverance into bloodstream and the changing of the DNA sequencing and cellular instruction, as opposed to manipulation of the brain sections responsible for euphoria through addictive technology. It is interesting for you to know such a situation existed and for you to see the nature of the choice point in times past. Yet, this knowledge is not essential for your evolution and ascension. What is essential is your ability to navigate through a choice point End Times scenario and remain within sovereignty. The high priests, priestesses, and keepers of the crystal structures and generators within your times of Atlantis did maneuver themselves and their realities into alignment whereby the choice point was bypassed by them. These individuals incarnated once more in your current times are indeed you. And so too do you maneuver in the exact same way, bypassing the current choice point on offer and all similar offshoots of said choice point. Always will there be a positive harvest and a negative one within a free will, universal and planetary system such as yours. And you present within the positive polarization of this harvest or galactic upgrade within that which is true memory, giving total recall within the Kundalini activation as a journey into all that is. We are the white-winged collective consciousness of 9. So I'll leave this video there. That is what the 9 said about the Atlantis choice point. And I think it is important to note what they said about It's not essential for us to know this information. It's interesting, especially for the indigo souls, but we don't need to know this information in order to ascend. But what is essential is our ability to navigate through a choice-pointed end times scenario and remain within sovereignty. That is the presentation for our opportunity to do so. So that's our mission at this time, is to navigate through this end time scenario, the choice point, and remain within sovereignty as we go through that. So yes, that's the questions that made up this video. And I would like to thank you very much for listening and staying with me till the end. And I'll be back with more videos, sending you lots of love. Bye.